the trained lawyer from England who was the chief rabbi of Temple Dehurst Sinai in Seattle. Rabbi Levine became a part of my advisory group for these various programs I had in the municipal court, but one day I got a note from him that he wanted to talk with me. He was sitting in court, and when I recessed court, I had a chance to talk with him, and he then told me of his dream and of his vision for developing a facility where persons of all ages, all groups, and all religions could come together. And he said to me, "Would you meet me in Mount Vernon on Sunday at 2 o'clock?" I told my wife, who absolutely adored him, as did I. She decided she would come with me. We came out here to this farmland, and it was raining cats and dogs. Rabbi Levine, unfettered, no umbrellas, had us sloshing in the mud, in the farm mud, walking around as he was telling my wife and me what he had in mind. And I thought to myself, this man is crazy. But I loved him so much I could not say he was insane. He was just crazy. But as he talked and expressed his vision, it became more apparent to me that it made sense, even though it was raining cats and dogs, and even though we were sloshing in the mud in farmland up to our ankles in the rain. That was the beginning of my understanding of what this was all about. And as Father Tracy has indicated, we had meetings, pre-board meetings, board meetings. Rabbi Levine had the capacity to persuade, partly because he was a brilliant scholar and rabbi, but partly also because of his legal training. All he would have to do would be to find somebody like me, tell me what he wanted me to do, and I would do it. But in those days, Rabbi Levine knew all the executives of all the major companies in Seattle. In the old days, we referred to them as CEOs with a great deal of pride. And so we had the CEOs of KOMO, of Washington Natural Gas, of Philadelphia Electric Company, and I could go down the line as I was looking at the names of people who were listed as participating in the development of Camp Brotherhood, and I thought to myself, here was a man who, with his ecumenical companion, the Reverend Father William Tracy, was able to persuade people to see the vision they both had and to help to make it a reality. This ability to persuade went to the University of Washington. It brought these wonderful students from the university to help in the development of the first structure. Father mentioned Darby Brown, as names are mentioned, my mind is going back to all these years, to all the wonderful people that I had the privilege of knowing through Father Tracy and through Rabbi Levine in connection with Camp Brotherhood. Nat Rogers, Bob Rogers is here, his father was among them. And if I went down the list, I could give you the names of 50 people who were what could then be called movers and shakers in our community, who were significant in helping us to develop this magnificent facility, which we now are enjoying and will continue to enjoy in the future. We used to have meetings, and again, I'm not sure at what point we established a board. Whether the meeting in the Washington Athletic Club or the meeting in the Levine's home on Cascadia Avenue in Seattle. And those of you who knew the Levines, you knew that Reba Levine was a professional artist. And she would have her artwork, and she was short, but she was also a magnificent cook. And we would like to have our meetings at the Levine residence because we could always be assured that we would have magnificent food prepared by Reba Levine. And it was part of that environment where the rabbi, Father Tracy, the other people sitting around the table were talking about what could be done, what should be done. I don't think anybody ever said something could not be done. And the spirit was always optimistic. This is the vision. This is the reality. This is what is possible. Even though we talked about it, and even though Rabbi Levine talked about it, and Father Tracy talked about it, and Reba Levine, I seem to recall, actually depicted what this would be like on one of her paintings. None of us could have contemplated that 35 years later, we would be sitting where we are now, that we would have had a reception in the William Warren building, that we would have the magnificence of these 200 acres of previous wet farmlands, which is an oasis in our world, which is an inviting place where people can gather and where persons, whoever they happen to be, women and men, children and adults, older people, younger people, religionists, non-religionists, persons of the various faiths, and I'm a Protestant, I'm an American Baptist. But it makes no difference. I enjoy the interchange of ideas, philosophies, religious history, and our present existence with persons regardless of their religious professions, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of who they are. And I have dreams, but I am not qualified to have visions. I leave visions to the Father Traces among us and the Rabbi Levines among us, but I have dreams. Dreams are momentary, they come and they go. But my dream is that my grandchildren will have the benefit of what has been started here to the point at which they can look back and say, my grandfather was part of this when it was nothing but a farm land in the rainy weather, in the mud. And look where we are today. And that is my dream. I would like to see it accomplished during my lifetime. I am 76 years of age. I do not know what my lifetime will be. I predicted 20 more years. So I expect to be around at least until I'm 96. So I've come back on the board after an absence of a number of years. And if I am not expelled from the board, I expect to work very hard to help to bring not only the vision of Father Tracy and Rabbi Levine into fruition, but the dream of Charlie Smith. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You mentioned Nat Rogers as one of the pioneers who gave his. Nat Rogers was one of the pioneers, a great businessman in Seattle, Van Waters and Rogers. You may have seen the name on the trucks. I did before I ever met Nat. So he was a good friend of rabbis, and he also kept up an interest in it and communicated that faith he had in Camp Brotherhood to his son Bob, who was chairman of our board for about 30 years. So was it more than 30 years? Anyhow, Bob, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. I've got 2 or 3 thoughts. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Go ahead and clip that on.
Clip it on, Bob.
First of all, I like to stand up when I'm talking.
Bob,
First of all,
clip it on.
oh, you want that on?
Clip it. Hold it.
They clip it on your nose,
Yeah.
or?
Thank
Paul and I started here at the same time, right? 25 years?
Yeah.
I think that's right. And that's number one. Number two is I have never before had this experience, which I ask your sympathy for, of following a Supreme Court justice at the bar. So bear with me. I think the thing that I want to tell you, though, about my history in this is that I went to Garfield High School in Seattle. In those days, Garfield was known as the melting pot of Seattle. My mother wouldn't let my sister go to Garfield because they had a whole bunch of people who weren't white and what do they call them? Anyhow, white, yeah, those kind. But my dad prevailed and let the 2 boys go to Garfield, so that worked out pretty well. I played football on the 1941 football team for Garfield, which had a history of winning football games, and in particular the Seattle Championship, and that year was no different. They turned out 16 letters for that team, and on that team there were 14 different ethnic or national histories involved in those 16 guys. And I knew right then that if you could get that kind of a group together at the right time, under the right circumstances, they would work together and they'd be winners. And I think that's one of the things I'd like to see this operation foster, because we need it badly. And Jamal and I have discussed this, and who else was in that discussion? Father Tracy. We need the interaction, and we need the understanding. And so I'll leave it at that. And thank you. Oh, one thing I forgot. Still hooked up. This cane was made by Rabbi Levine. Oh. And it was given to my father. He made one for me, which has disappeared because I put it on a plaque and gave it to Rita, and then she died. Very inconsiderate, I would say. And at that point, the cane and the plaque and the whole works disappeared, and I've never seen it again. So I'm using my dad's cane made by the rabbi.
And it says.
You know, it says, "He truly lives who has learned how to serve."
Oh.
Bob, we might have found the answer for you tonight. I got a call just before I come over here from Mrs. Levine's son, David, and his mail was late getting to him, Randy. So he was in Bellingham. He didn't think, is he here? I thought he might come down late tonight, so he might have the answer to where the cane went. But that about concludes the presentation of those of us who are the pioneers. But if any Mayor has to say, Mayor has been here, he drove nails right from the very beginning. So Mayor, you take over.
Nice to be a pioneer. It ages you. Bob and I did attend Garfield High at the same time, and
I graduated.
Oh, that's mean.
I think I did. I got into university somehow. But my involvement came early. My dad and Rabbi Levine were great friends. Rabbi Levine had moved from England to become a rabbi after he was an attorney and went to Lithuania. And my dad's family came from the same city that Rabbi Levine went to. So they had a lot in common, and he used to come over and play chess with my dad. And I'd sit there next to him and watch, and once in a while I'd try to kibitz and get in trouble, but the two of them would play chess by the hour. And so later when I was in Temple, I became Temple D. Hirsch's president of the men's club. About the time that this dream of Rabbi and Fathers came together. And Rabbi came down and said, you know, Mayor, the men's club needs to be involved in a lot of different things. And I said, you're absolutely right. We're trying to do ushering, and we're doing all kinds of things for the temple. And he said, well, you know, I think it's about time that we did something that was more community-minded. And so he said, I've got an idea. So he said, why don't you get a bunch of the guys together and the men together and get a truck, and next Sunday would be a good time to do it. And he says, you can organize it, can't you? And he said, oh, I said, well, you don't say no to Rabbi. Yes, we can do this. And so we got about 8 or 9 of us together. And next thing we knew, he gave me a piece of paper with instructions where the truck should be driven to. And we had a heck of a time. The interchange wasn't there. Yeah, before the interchange. That's right. And we came out here, and the weather wasn't great, that's for sure. And but we finally made it, and we got here, and Rick would remember me, and I think those days there was about 8 of us, and they assigned us as carpenters. You know, just like Tracy was talking about Jewish carpenters, and naturally we should be a carpenter. Well, to make a long story short, we end up hitting our nails, and more than any other nails. So Rick and his crew decided that we should go out and clear the brush that had to be taken, and so we became swampers for about 2 or 3 different weekends out here. And so that was my initiation to the program here. But Father Rabbi Levine was, after my dad passed away, he became almost like a father, and like so many of the people that came in contact with Rabbi, he became a mentor. And nothing he could ask for or thought about it was real important. I was fortunate enough that Father Tracy and later on came into Stanwood, and we became, for 7 years I think it was, we had breakfast every Saturday morning and kept...
Thanks to Delphine.
And his Jewish mother, as he calls her. But we really, we had a great deal of enjoyment together and talking over the things that Rabbi did and what he did and so forth. And just uniquely, it isn't part of the aging process of this, but Father and I both, and I think I've mentioned it before, and we happened to be the last people, I guess, to be with Rabbi. We accidentally both went to Seattle and were on a weekday. I forget what day it was, but
Sunday.
Was it Sunday? I thought it was a weekday. Anyhow, we both came from different ends of the hospital, walking down the hallway, and we met at his door, and there was no nurse out there. Mm-hmm. She wasn't at the station, so Father Tracy says, well, let's go in. I said, no, private and so forth, don't. But when Father Tracy says don't go in, you don't pay attention to signs, you just do it, just like with Rabbi. So we went in, and Father took his one hand on one side of the bed. Rabbi was comatose, and I had the other hand. And it's by the time we left there, we both said prayers, and we got outside, and he said, Father Tracy said to me, "What did you feel?" I said, "Well, I felt the Rabbi told me that we better do something about Camp Brotherhood." And he says, "That's the same feeling I got." Father Tracy put his arm around me and said, "We're going to make it work." And that was one of the last times we were together. And it's been so wonderful to have the vision and dream. And we're so grateful to have Father Tracy here with us today to started the dream. And the gentleman here at the table has spoken so eloquently, to have them part of seeing what has happened. Emotions and feelings and sensitivities can't be put into words. I can only say that this is one of our proudest days. And we know we'll have many, many more, but this is a great one for all of us here.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to conclude by acknowledging a few people who have been especially helpful as volunteers. Jim Klansnick from Bellevue, and Bill, Bill Wright, yeah. Do you want to stand up? And we recognize both of you come up here and spent many hours of work. Thank you very much. But to all who have helped here and will continue to make this a great center of light for the future when human beings are divided in so many issues. We're very happy to have Jamal Rahman, Muslim from Bangladesh, here with us, and especially tonight as the news reports how we're expecting attacks in 6 different countries from Muslim extremists, and we need to get together and share our viewpoints. I'd like to conclude. Do you have any other message?
You give a blessing as we leave.
I will. I give a little concluding story about the benefits of ecumenism, interfaith work, but there's also some dangers to go with it. I like to tell this story anyhow as a possible danger, minor one. We got an award from the Methodists, Good News Award for our program challenge. It won a national award from the National Conference of Christians and Jews. But this one from the Methodists was to be awarded to us at their annual meeting at Pacific, part of the meeting university, Pacific, what's the Methodist University in Pacific? Ciel Pacific. No, not Ciel Pacific. Pacific Sound, wasn't that it? Or Puget Sound University. Excuse me, thank you. So we're to be over there at 6 o'clock. So a rabbi said to me, I said I would drive him. So I'm not, it was at 7 o'clock, I guess. So I said I'd be there at 6 o'clock to pick him up. So I arrived at 6 o'clock, rang the doorbell, and Reva came down, and she's all fussed. She says, "I'm not ready, and Rabbi is late from the synagogue." She says, "Sit down, make yourself at home. Here's the paper. I've got to finish getting ready," and so on. So I'm inside looking at the Seattle Times, and the doorbell rings. And I thought, now, what should I do? Should I be ecumenical? Should I answer the doorbell, or should I wait? And I said, well, maybe Rabbi forgot his keys, whatever. So I opened the door. And this gentleman said, "Good evening." I said, "Good evening." He said, "I'm the Fuller Brush man."
No.
So it's like, "Good evening." He says, "Is the wife at home?" So I thought, now, how am I going to answer that one? I said, "No, Mrs. Levine is not available right now." That was a good legal answer, don't you think, Justice? But he said, she wanted this brush for her, some little thing for her range, and so I promised her she'd have it for Saturday. She was having some guests in. Well, he said, "I guess I'll come back tomorrow." Well, I said, "Mrs. Levine won't be here tomorrow," because I knew she went to the synagogue. And, oh, well, I'll have to wait until Monday. So I looked at the thing. How much does that cost her? It's less than $5. I said, here's a $5. You won't have to come back. And I'm sure I'll leave it here for her. She'll be glad to get it. So he took the $5 from me. He walked down the 4 steps from the door there in Cascade Avenue. You walked on, Justice. We got to the bottom, he turned around with this really worried look on his face, and he said, "Aren't you that fellow that's on the television with the rabbit?"
Yeah.
What are you paying bills for her for? So that's just one of the dangers of the minor danger. But anyhow, we come to the end of a wonderful evening. So I'd like to conclude with just a brief prayer. Almighty God, whether we're created by the Big Bang, however you created us, we believe we are your children. Did you call us to live in peace and harmony with each other? I recall the first meeting we had here of Methodists, Catholic Christians, and Jews and Muslims. I went home and I watched the most beautiful sunset in my life. And I believe you spoke to me that night. There was the end of hostility and the beginning of new relationships, of which Camp Brotherhood could be a part. For being part of this program, I profoundly thank you and give thanks for all who helped in making it a reality. May your peace and your joy be with them. Amen. Thank you all very much.
One final thought. You've got to recognize that the challenge program was a real success when the Fuller Brush men recognized the people.
That's a